Alright, so we just saw the intro video with the quadratic equation. I'm going to go ahead and write that up here. I know you have it in your notes, but just in case you come back to this video as a review and you don't see the intro video, we'll have everything we need. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Remember, there's a song that goes with it that will help us remember. Alright, so let's look at how this works. We have our first example, 5t squared plus 8 equals negative 12. So when you do the quadratic formula, you do want everything on one side and 0 on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and add 12t to both sides. And I'm being just a little lazy right there. I am adding it to both sides. I just kind of put it in the middle because I know that's going to give me 5t squared. That plus 12t is going to come next, and then plus 8 equals 0. Alright, this is standard form, by the way. You want that in the proper order. That's why I put the 12t in the correct spot. Now let's go ahead and identify our a, b, and c. A is the number in front of the t squared, which is 5. B is the number in front of t, 12. And c is the number on the end, 8. So now we'll just follow our quadratic formula and plug everything in. Feel free to sing the song. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Alright, so from here, what we want to do is figure out what this number is underneath the square root. And honestly, I would just grab your calculator and very carefully type that in. 12, and if you put the parentheses everywhere that I have them, you'll be in good shape. If you do all of that math, you get a negative 16 all over 10. Alright, so when we did these problems in Algebra 1, we simplified this a certain way. Now that we're in Algebra 2, let me show you how we'll get a simplified answer. What we're going to focus on is simplifying our square root right there. Well, it's the square root of a negative number. So now that we know about our imaginary number I, we can bring in I, square root of 16, all over 10. And now, do you know what the square root of 16 is? And I know that you do. So that's going to be negative 12 plus or minus 4i all over 10. So this is what x equals. At this point, if you can do any reducing, we have a negative 12, a 4, and a 10. If we can divide all three of those numbers by the same value, we can reduce this. And you probably noticed that you can divide them all by 2. So we get a negative 6 plus or minus 2i over 5. As long as all three numbers can be reduced by something, then we're good. And that's our answer for x. And technically this is two answers with that plus or minus. Negative 6 plus 2i over 5 and negative 6 minus 2i over 5. In Algebra 1 we separated those out, but in Algebra 2 we just get to leave them like that. Alright, next example. We want this to be in standard form, so we have a little bit of work to do. We're going to distribute that, so we get 3x squared plus 6x equals 4. Just like the last equation, let's get everything on the same side. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So 3x squared plus 6x minus 4 equals 0. It's very important to have that equals 0. Then we want to make sure we're identifying our a, b, and c correctly. A is 3, b is 6, c is negative 4. Then we just plug into our formula. X equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now again, I'm very specific with the parentheses I put in here, especially around this b value that we're squaring. If that was a negative number, I would absolutely need those parentheses with the negative b on the inside so that when I squared it on my calculator, I get the correct answer. So we get negative 6 plus or minus, and then if you type all that into your calculator, feel free to pause the video right now and see if you can get to the same thing I get, which is square root of 84 all over 6. So how do we simplify this? Well, I don't need to bring in I because it's a positive square root, but can you simplify the square root of 84? Well, yeah, you'd say, well, 4 fits in 21 times. So x equals negative 6 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 21 all over 6. And then similar to what we did on the last one, we can't reduce with the square root number, but if you have anything outside the square root in all three spots, so this spot, and this spot, if you can divide those all by the same number, we can reduce this one more time. And they're all even, so you can divide by 2. So we get negative 3 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we're left with the square root of 21 all over 3. And there's our simplified answer.